This week marks the 75th anniversary of the end of World War II. Why are we talking about that in a show that is ostensibly about new technology? Well, you're hard-pressed to find another point in recent history where technology accelerated faster than World War II. There are things that were developed in World War II that we still use today. And to explore what those things are, we have Peter Marks from GovHack and Access Informatics and Sarah Moran, the co-founder and CEO of Girl Geek Academy. Peter, I'm just going to start with you. Of the various different things that came out of World War II, I mean, there's transport, there's weaponry, there's electronics. What are the developments you don't think get enough attention?
I think if Get Smart teaches us anything, and it can teach us a lot, it shows that technology can be used for evil as well as good. Radio really kicked along. Up until then, communications had been very difficult, and the use of radio meant that on the ground, troops could talk to each other instantaneously. Radar was developed to track planes and to guide things like self-guiding missiles, which led on to all sorts of applications in air traffic and so on. Obviously, the big one is the nuclear bomb. It was a huge project. The government in the US brought together the best minds, the best science, and I think if wars do anything, it aligns a country's objectives, and it means that money can be spent, the best scientists can be brought to bear. This then, led to, I guess, the nuclear power industry. Other things that had strange side effects are radar, which was the development of the magnetron, which was a way to develop high frequency, high power, and that led directly onto the product that we all use to heat up cold pizza from a couple of days ago, the microwave oven that shipped slightly after the war. There were ideas right back then that we could have thinking machines that could do logic, that could do symbolic logic. It's taken a long time, but it is something we now have. Automatic language translation and things that would have been completely unimaginable back then. So lots and lots of things. Nylon and, of course, penicillin, which was used to treat all of the soldiers' sexually transmitted diseases.
There are things that were developed with a certain purpose that in practical life after the end of a war, we find all kinds of unexpected ways of using those developments, Sarah. Is there anything that stands out to you as being perhaps one of the more surprising developments out of that period that is still part of our lives today, Sarah?
For me, it's Silicon Valley. People around the world, people go, oh, we need to be the next Silicon Valley, that's how we're going to do our tech, is we'll be the next Silicon Valley and we'll get all these VCs and entrepreneurs and we'll make that happen. But what people don't understand is that none of that happened without the precursor of the spending in defense and, as Peter spoke to, like this alignment of shared goals around innovation and what that could look like. That's what created Silicon Valley. So don't want to make it an incentive. We shouldn't need a war to bring that out, but that is one of the things that I think is really underappreciated by countries that are trying to replicate what happened in America, at least, that it came from an era that really was quite a long time ago and that we're still benefiting from today.
There was just something you mentioned earlier, Peter, that I feel like I cannot let this show pass without asking, which is, how did they develop nylon? How did nylon come about through the war?
They had started to work on these synthetic fibres a little bit before, but it was the ability to make parachutes was the thing that kicked on nylon, and it wasn't just stockings. That was hugely important and, of course, led on to the whole synthetic cloth industries that, dominate all of our clothes. I don't think I'm wearing any natural fibres today, for example. So these things, kick on. It's interesting, the money that can be brought to bear has long-term consequences, as Sarah said, and just last week, Elon Musk was criticising something about Bernie Sanders' view of socialism, and Sanders replied that Musk has been the beneficiary of millions of dollars of government funding, and that's how it works. Apart from government funding, it's also things like the educational institutions being there. When I've caught buses in Silicon Valley, you just listen in on conversations. There's people talking about chip design and new CPUs and this kind of thing just on the bus. It's a hot environment where all of that is happening in the one place, and it's just not easy to just make another copy of it.
Governments are already making large investments in ways we have never seen before. And so the rule book is out the window. There's an opportunity for governments to think about what they're going to spend on. Why not look to the past and see what benefits have come from such massive spending and do that here? I think the federal and state governments are all thinking about that. There's definitely advocacy groups across Australia who are saying, yeah, like we could do this. Now it's just about, well, is there the political, social will to bring that about? And I think that's what's going to play out over the next 6 months. It'll be quite quick that we'll see, will the money go to new opportunities to build a future, that Australia could be the next Silicon Valley?
I think that there's a role for pure research, and I really fear that the constant cuts to things like the CSIRO in Australia have meant that research isn't being done. Often you look back at that, the mother of all demos, and all of the technologies, including things like video conferencing and collaborative editing, these were just pure ideas, pure research that no one really knew if they would ever turn into a product. And what's amazing is how many of them are now part of our daily lives. You just can't predict when you do research where it's going to end up. And I think it's important to have funding for pure research with no immediate commercial objective, because you don't know, it could be the next nylon.
We have an opportunity, if you see the pandemic as a war, or at least one of those once in a 100-year events, we're at the time where we're going to see what children 100 years down the track will be benefiting from how we choose to handle it. So from live in lockdown, I tell you, just give me something to hang on to.
You guys, we actually ended up the show on a positive note, and we somehow did that via a world war. That's an achievement. All right, there is lots more of this in the podcast of Download This Show. You can find it wherever you get your good podcasts, and we will see you there. See you, gang.